support.
The maestro, please!
End of October, so it's time for the Halloween pop analysis. Given it's not really that spooky of a song, because today we're going over Birds of a Feather by Billie Eilish.
Billie Eilish.
Marking pop analysis number 3 that we've done for the young pop star, first mentioning her back when we did
I'm the bad guy. Duh.
and did her next one the following year with
You think that you're the man, I think therefore I am.
Since then, she's released a bit more music, and oddly enough, her other 2 charting hits were from that same album as the previous pop analysis, those being
Try not to abuse your power.
as well as the title track of said album.
I'm happier than ever. Wish I could.
Background.
Birds of a Feather was released as a single on July 2nd, 2024. Given it was released before that off of the album, which we'll talk about later, thus having it chart at the end of April at number 77. It obviously got its biggest bump, though, once it was released as a single, and it only took about 3 months before it was at number 2 as of the end of October. As alluded to, it was released as a single off of the album Hit Me Hard and Soft, which was released on May 17th of 2024. It is the second single off said album, the first one being
I could eat that girl for lunch as she dances on my tongue. Tastes like she might be the one.
The album had a couple of different versions released, a sped up version, a slowed and reverb version, and a version that just had the isolated vocals, inherently having all of those versions for Birds of a Feather as well. Getting back to the song proper, in addition to Billie Eilish, she has her brother with her as well as she typically does, Phineas. Since then, he's gotten a few more songwriting and production pop credits to his name, such as
No one's listening, and that's just fucking lonely.
and while it is technically just kind of a redone version of When the Party's Over, which his sister did perform, he also has this one as well.
You never got to meet Papa. He's sweet proper. He keep Mama on my toe.
Birds of a Feather is released by both Dark Room and Interscope.
Form.
Birds of a Feather is a pop song, is 3.5 minutes long, is in D major, and 105 beats per minute. After the 2-bar intro, Billie Eilish gives us the first verse,
I want you to stay.
which is then followed, oddly enough, by a refrain.
Birds of a feather, we should stick together.
We then get to the first pre-chorus,
And I don't know what I'm crying for.
which is obviously then followed by the first chorus.
I'll love you till the day that I die.
We then get the second verse,
Say you wanna quit, don't be stupid.
no refrain, instead going to the second pre-chorus,
Might not be love, but baby,
and then a second chorus, which is a combination of the previous chorus and the refrain.
till the day I die, forever and even
We then get the first and only post-chorus, which ultimately ends the song.
Synth.
Probably the most prominent of the instruments in the song, and it very much just repeats the same thing over and over, almost for the entirety of the song, this same syncopated rhythm, going back and forth, first between D and A, and then C sharp and A.
Keyboard.
The keyboard that plays throughout has a variety of patches, but the first one we hear is this very soft kind of pad figure. Very spaced out, just doing these short 2 chords to open up the first 4 bars on that D major 7 and that B minor 7. As we move into the following phrase, it then does an E minor 7, and then goes to an A dominant 7 sus 4, before resolving to just a normal dominant 7 and hitting that high E at the end. It essentially repeats that, but later on in the song, it's now more of an extended pad, and the patch is a little different sounding. As you can see, while it is a different sound, it's basically doing the same chords in the same arrangements. Do note, though, that occasionally when it gets back to that D major 7, when it goes back to the beginning of the phrase, it has that nice F sharp up top, kind of a nice motion from the high E previously. Beyond that, every now and again, we get a couple of additions. For example, in this section right here, we have this very quiet piano line playing over top of it. And in this instance, we have a kind of sort of synth pad lead going up over top of it. Again, awfully quiet, but sometimes you can hear it poke through a bit better. It could be a little bit more apparent when it's simply holding that E, like in this section, and it has that nice fall off on the end.
Bass.
A bass guitar, to be more specific, mostly because some of the bass roll is actually taken over by the keyboard since it's playing so low. Regardless, the bass really just does these repeated 16th notes, first on that low D, and then going even lower to that B. It then works its way up to the E before dropping all the way down to that low A. You'll notice, though, at the end of every 2 bars, it does have some sort of passing motion, though, to make it a bit more interesting. It pretty much does that for the entirety of the song, but just like the keyboard, it does change in tone a little bit. Here you can hear it's a bit more of aggressive in timbre, and also it holds that low A at the very end of this particular phrase.
Guitar.
An acoustic guitar pretty much just kind of supporting all of the figures that we've talked about previously. You'll notice here, for example, that it is really just doing the same chords that the keyboard was doing earlier, that D major 7 going to a B minor 7, given it's a bit more held out. It doesn't really deviate from that too much. You can see here it's doing the E minor 7, but notice that it just does the A dominant 7. It does not do that suspension that the keyboards do. Additionally, it also is doubling that synth line we heard at the very beginning of the song, making it stand out more.
Lead.
While technically another synth, the lead stands out mostly because it only ever plays at the end, and you'll notice, especially when we start talking about the vocals, that it is basically just doing Billie Eilish's vocal line. In fact, the only place it actually deviates from that is at the very end of the song, right before it ends.
Verse.
Now you can really see that the lead is really just doing what Billie Eilish does in the very beginning of the song in the first verse, hitting that quick F sharp down to E, working way towards D, and then dropping below to B, working your way back up to F sharp, repeating that in the following phrase as well. Very spaced out and very contained in her register.
I want you to stay till I'm in the grave.
Essentially repeating that, but now we have all of these nice offbeat eighth notes before tying down to that low A.
Till I rot away, dead and buried. Till I'm in the casket you carry.
There are slight alterations as we move further in the first verse, mostly due to just additional lines, and we have these kind of ad-libs at the end of any given subphrase.
If you go, I'm going to. 'Cause it was always you.
She then, like the previous one, does go back to these offbeat eighth notes and those low A's, but you'll notice that this one ends different. Kind of the same figure, but now it's more held out and goes up to that G down to that F sharp at the very end on Baby.
And if I'm turning blue, save me. Nothing left to lose without my baby.
The second verse essentially starts off the same, given that F sharp is held sometimes, and sometimes it's an F sharp to E melisma, in addition to the more ad-libs that we were getting at the end of the first verse.
I want you to see how you look to me.
But as we can see, it is very similar to the first verse, minus some changed rhythms for changed words.
You wouldn't believe if I told you. You would keep the compliments I throw you.
As we start to move on, though, her little ad-libs become a bit more interesting, longer melismas that move both up and down.
But you're so full of shit. Tell me it's a bit. Oh.
But at the end of the second verse, she ends it just like she did with the first, with that little change at the very end on that G going to F sharp.
Say you don't say it, your mind's polluted. Say you wanna quit, don't be stupid.
Refrain.
Wouldn't be a Billie Eilish song if we didn't have significantly layered vocals. Going back between both 3-part and 4-part harmonies, you'll notice, though, very much emphasizing the syncopation that we were hearing in the verses.
Birds of a feather, we should stick together. I know I said I'd never think I wasn't better alone.
Pretty much sticking just to straight eighth notes until we get to the very end, where we have a bit more of a quarter note syncopation right before going to just the main vocal line from Billie with no layering at the very end.
Can't change the weather, might not be forever, but if it's forever, it's even better.
Pre-chorus.
Contrasting to the refrain, the pre-chorus is just Billie with no additional layering from herself. Notice how she's very much abandoned the syncopation, minus a few spots here and there, especially at the end and at the very beginning, but it's mostly quarter notes going up and down in this nice sort of wavy figure that she's doing, getting as low as the A and as high as the B on the middle of the staff.
And I don't know what I'm crying for. I don't think I could love you more.
The following phrase, which transitions into the chorus, hence why it's only 3 bars as opposed to 4, it kind of repeats that same sort of thing, minus the melisma at the end.
It might not be long, but maybe
Chorus.
The chorus puts Billie a bit higher in her range, mostly staying on the staff entirely, and very much is trying to focus on these longer melismas at the end of each subphrase.
I'll love you till the day that I die. Till the day that I die.
Given as we move on through the chorus, they get a bit more and more complicated.
Till the light leaves my eyes. Till the day that I die.
The second chorus is interesting, though, as it combines what was previously done with the chorus, a large focus on kind of melismas, and, well, the entirety of the refrain playing underneath it.
Don't wanna say goodbye. We should still get it out.
You'll notice that Billie is simplifying her melismas, though, as we have something underneath them we don't want to get too complicated, otherwise we're losing what we're actually hearing, but especially that one she has at the very end where she gets very, very high, going up to that D on top of the staff.
Till the light leaves my eyes. Till the day I die. Forever is even better.
Post-chorus.
The post-chorus, oddly enough, is just a variation of what was done in the pre-chorus. Those quarter notes, those up and down figures, and very little syncopation. Oddly enough, it actually has an uneven phrasing. The final part of the post-chorus kinda leaves you hanging before the song ultimately ends. A little different than the previous 2 Billie Eilish songs we looked at when comparing Bad Guy and Therefore I Am to Birds of a Feather. It's more loving, more emotional, even romantic, which, to be fair, when you look at her entire discography, is a significant amount of it. It's not just kind of her creepy alternative aesthetic that makes it to the top of the pop charts when it comes to Billie Eilish. So for those who do want us to look at more of these sort of loving and romantic and, well, emotional songs of Billie Eilish, I will say, given she's still pretty early on in her career, we probably won't have to.
Say goodbye. We should still get it out.
do these at the end of the month. The one for October does always end up on Halloween, and we've had one pop analysis so far that has been at least somewhat fitting for the holiday. The rest are pretty much overwhelmingly love songs, or at least the lack thereof.